Hello, and welcome to Showing Up with Pam. I am very excited this afternoon. I have a wonderful guest, and I'm going to introduce her. Her name is Karith, and Karith is a former co-host of controversial radio personality show with Don Imus. She's a former Fortune 500 HR executive administrator. She's a speaker, humorist, TV and radio personality, author, entrepreneur, wife, and mother. She is the CEO and founder of Frame, which stands for Foster Russell Alliance for Meaning Expression. This is a nonprofit whose mission is to inspire free speech, social change, and empowerment through education and mentorship. Some of her signature programs impacting lives at American academic institutions, organizations, and corporations across America are Stereotyped 101, You Are Enough, the ABCs of 2020 Leadership, the Humor Initiative, the Art of Letting Go, and last but certainly not least, You Can Be Perfect or You Can Be Happy, How to Let Go, Worry Less, and Get a Life, which is also the title of her new book. Please welcome Karith. Hello.
Hi, Pam. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited you're here. How are you doing?
I'm excited to be here. Really. Thank you. It's a treat.
Excellent. Well, let us get started. I will ask my standard question to start us off. Tell me who's been showing up big for you now, given the current times that we're going through.
Oh, wow. Considering the fact that we, yes, are basically stuck inside our homes, I'm very, very fortunate to have two very instrumental people in my life. My husband, who has been showing up like nobody's business. That man put a garden in our backyard. From scratch, got a tiller and till
my goodness.
In Texas is not easy because it's mostly clay. Planted the garden, had put a fence around it because first the bunnies were getting to it, then the birds were getting to it. So we had to put bird mesh around it. And the kids while I've been basically pivoting this new way of life. You can't be a speaker now at a conference when a conference doesn't exist. So you have to take your programming online. And that's been a lot of learning new systems and programs. And then my mother has been showing up in one of the best ways. Even though we can't be together like we used to, she'll make bread. She brings over soup. She's teaching the girls how to sew virtually. She's really, she's amazing anyway, but she's found things and ways to still be an influential part of all of our lives.
Oh, that's fantastic. So we are in about almost at midpoint for 2020. What would you say the biggest surprise is for you for 2020? Other than the obvious?
Right, other than the obvious, having my life completely just 180'd. I used to be on a plane once a week, and now I'm not, having the children home full time, which was always something we talked about doing. Homeschooling, it's one thing to have a plan for it. It's another thing to have it thrust upon you. And so, the ability to shift, the ability to pivot, not that I ever doubted that it was something I could do, but, I went from having a 50-hour week to an 80-hour week, just to catch up, so that I could continue to make a living, because essentially within a 72-hour period, and I don't want to, I'm trying to speak words into something positive, but within a 72-hour period, all of my work, all of the income that was there was gone. So you don't have a choice really, but to move forward and not stay stagnant. And while it is taking a lot of time at the moment, that time will make up for itself eventually once, systems get in place and it becomes a well-oiled machine,
Absolutely. Okay. Well, since you talked about pivoting, we're going to go ahead and pivot, and we are going to talk about your new book, which I'm very excited to read as soon as it comes out at the end of this month. So tell me, what prompted you to write the book?
Sure. So the book's title is You Can Be Perfect or You Can Be Happy. And that was actually something a very good friend of mine said. I was a new mom. This was about 7 years ago. No, almost 8 now. Wow. Time flies. And I was just beating myself up. I was, there are things that had gone not quite according to plan. I was very fortunate to have a healthy child. She was just smaller than we'd expected, and she wasn't latching properly. And I didn't realize that. And so she wasn't getting any nutrition. And it was very scary. She lost weight, which she could not afford to lose. And I was just down in the dumps. And my girlfriend, her name is Heather, she said, listen, Karith, you can be perfect or you can be happy. The choice is yours. And, it was one of those situations where the heavens should have opened up, chorus of angels should have sung, and I should have just gotten it. And, at the time, it was just, oh, what a really nice thing to say. Thank you for comforting me. Thank you but, it just always was in the back of my head. You can be perfect, or you can be happy. And I realized, how applicable that was to so many other things in life, but also that I spent so much of my life, not just motherhood, but of my life previously, trying so hard to be perfect that I was preventing joy and happiness. And I was losing in that respect. Right. I was losing so much more than I was gaining. When the reality is, there is also no such thing as perfect. We've been sold this lie that perfection exists, primarily, by the media. I think it's also an expression that we use. I even with my small children, I try to catch myself, and they're like, "Mommy, what does my picture look like? Do you love it?" And I'm, "Oh, it's perfect." I want to say it's really creative. Really, you went out on a limb. I love what you did, because when you set the bar at perfect, if it's not perfect the next time, they're always going to think it's a failure. Which I think is what has happened to so many of us along the way. We've thought, oh goodness, we can't, if it's not perfect, I've done something wrong and I'm not accomplished. So.
Okay. So I'm curious, because when you hear perfectionism spoken about or talked about, I'm wondering how that shows up for the average person in their life. Can you maybe give some examples of kind of what you're alluding to when you say perfect or perfectionism?
Sure. So I would say that, well, actually, could you repeat that again just a little bit? I have a child who's not being perfect outside
of course. Of course. So I'm just wondering, we hear perfectionism spoken about, and I'm just wondering, because when people hear that, they may not understand what that means. I liked your example of when your child had a picture and don't you love it, and we catch ourselves from saying it's perfect. But what are some of the ways that may manifest or just show up in our lives that we may not realize we're shooting for this perfectionism?
Absolutely. And thank you for repeating. I think it means that something's flawless, right? That no holes can be poked in it. Like it's airtight, right? And the thing is, there's always going to be room for improvement. There's always going to be something that can be done just a little bit better or changed or altered. But if we get caught up in that, we won't get anything done. And, I have a term I use called perfection paralysis. And, so often we get caught up in that. You kind of wrote about that. I loved when you were introducing, our conversation on LinkedIn. The problem with perfection paralysis is that it keeps us from just living our lives, but from meeting goals and accomplishing things that otherwise we would be able to do. And yet we can go back. Like nothing is in stone. Nothing is permanent except death,
Right. So I'm curious. I know one of the things, I was fortunate to actually get the first chapter to read of Karith's book. It's fantastic. And I know one of the things that you mentioned was that, sometimes we will not do anything because we're too much obsessed with what other people will think based on whatever it is we're trying to do. And I'm wondering, do you have any tips or tricks for trying to get that voice out of our head that worries about all the other perceptions of others, and that just allows us to go forth and do what we think is right in our gut?
Well, that's definitely a muscle you have to exercise. We will always, it's just part of human nature. It's a default mode, right? To wonder what other people are thinking, to care. And that doesn't mean you don't care and you don't take constructive criticism, but it's a matter of not letting that get in your head to the point that you're so affected, you can't move forward. one of the great examples, which is a little cliche, but you remember the movie Pretty Woman, where
Of course, I watch that all the time.
I love that movie, right? Such a chick flick, but I think everybody I know likes it. And there's a scene where Julia Roberts is in bed with Richard Gere, and he's telling her how wonderful she is and that she's smart and this creative, beautiful spirit and being. And she's like, but the bad stuff is easier to believe.
Yes, I remember that.
Default mode that I think we tend to go to. And so when you can catch yourself heading down that path and almost replace it, you have to replace it sometimes with, if you say one negative thing about yourself, you have to say 5 positive things, 3 to 5 positive things. It's training your brain almost. Right? Because nothing positive comes out of beating yourself up. And, the first tenet of the book is about kindness. Be kind. We always hear be kind to other people, give other people grace, give them leeway. You don't know what kind of day they've been having. You know what kind of life they've had,
Right.
But we forget that we have to be kind to ourselves. Self-care is not selfish. And being kind is giving yourself that grace, offering yourself a break for having a bad day. There have been many bad days before coronavirus and COVID-19, and there will be many after. And it's okay to have a bad day. It really is. But you don't stay stuck in it.
Okay. As I was reading the information you shared about your book, I was struck by how much we actually have in common, because our similarities of how we grew up in our neighborhood, being the only African-American child, trying to fit in, trying to have a sense of belonging, probably changing ourselves in ways just to make sure, we were accepted. And now I know that you have 2 young girls. So I'm curious now, with all the knowledge you have, if there are things you are trying to do that encourage them and allow them to feel like they're enough, and that they don't need to worry about what everyone else says and so forth. Do you have any of those you could share?
What I try to do with my daughters is just to instill a sense of self. Like, you don't have to comply to anyone else's labels. And, stereotyping, that's a big part of the work that I do with my nonprofit, is talking about how, unconscious bias, obviously it exists. It's something that we all deal with. It doesn't matter who you are or what you are. We all have it. We all deal with it. But it's not even a matter of beating yourself up about it or playing the blame game. It's a matter of acknowledging it and catching yourself in the act. And that means not putting someone else in a category and not doing that to you. Because it's a really dangerous game when you say, well, and it's easy to do because, we've been taught or told who we were initially from our families growing up. Right. Yes. This is who we are. This is our stock. This is where we come from. That's who they are. Right. The other. And then that becomes ingrained. We pick it up from what we see in the media. We pick it up from movies and TV. And now, of course, social media. And the idea, especially as someone who, like, I never fit the bill, if you will, for what people wanted portrayed to say a Black woman was in America. I wasn't the stereotype. Obviously, I'm Black. Right. Obviously, I'm a woman. Both of those characteristics and traits, I boldly accept and welcome. But is that all that I am? No, of course not. I'm a comedian. I'm an artist. I'm a free thinker. I'm an independent person. Those are, I call them the bonuses, and I'm very fortunate that I had an upbringing that, while it taught me to be very proud of my background, my ethnicity, and where I came from, it also taught me not to be limited by that. Right. So with being a woman, I had the opportunity to go to a women's college, Stevens in Columbia, Missouri, the second oldest women's college in the country. And from that experience, I learned that being a woman was, you could accomplish anything. You weren't limited, but that was stressed. And so I came into a lot of male dominated scenarios, not thinking, oh, they're not going to like me because I'm Black, because I'm a woman. Those are my bonuses. And I think that's why I've had success in media. I've had success in, comedy and in speaking, because I don't come with limited baggage on my back.
Okay.
Or
Wow.
limiting, excuse me.
So one of the things I want to do is share the story of how I actually met Karith. We were participating in a conference. I believe it was the DevOps Day conference in Dallas in 2018. And you were one of the keynote speakers. And I also gave a presentation. And I remember when I first saw you, I just felt that you were so put together and you had this air of confidence about you. And I remember I was nervous. I was going through my slides, trying to make sure I knew everything. And I saw some of the other speakers and I could see they had nerves. But when I looked at you, you just seemed calm as a cucumber, like, okay, let's do this. And I just thought, I want to be like her.
Oh, you make me feel good.
And we have actually became friends. We had lunch at least once or twice. We've spoken.
We have.
And I know in the last couple of years, I've just seen like you have just grown and your reach has grown and so much has happened in the last couple of years. What would you say perhaps is maybe one of your biggest accomplishments in maybe the last 4 or 5 years, something that you're very proud of?
Probably the fact that I just keep moving. I don't stop. Sometimes that's not always the best thing because you do need to take a break. But I had someone who I considered him a big brother. I met him years ago when I was on the production team for The View. That was my first big job out of college, and he was a voiceover guy. And he said, it was one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received. He said, "You just don't be stagnant. You can't be stagnant. That's when you're in trouble." And even if it's the wrong move, which technically it won't be, because even if it's something you don't want to ever do again or experience, you did it, you got it out of the way. So you aren't going to go back there again. So would that really make it the wrong move? But just you keep moving forward. You keep saying yes. That's one of the chapters in the book is to say yes. To say yes to the opportunities that frighten you, that scare you, that make you hesitate a little bit because it's new and you haven't done it and it pushes you out of your comfort zone. But to stay moving. The only bad move is to not move at all.
Okay. I like that. What would you say your biggest motivation is? I think I know, but I want to hear you tell me.
I have multiple motivations, but probably the biggest for me truly is not wanting to live in a state of what if.
Okay.
Meaning, what if I try this and it works out? What could happen after that? What if I don't do this and then I'm going to be wondering the rest of my life? Like that what if? To me, it's such a dangerous place to be, that wondering what if, because I'd rather know. I want an answer.
Okay. Okay.
What did you think my answer was going to be for that?
I thought it might be your daughters, that you might wanted to show them, like, this is what mommy's doing and this is what we expect for you to do coming along. So, but that's okay. I don't mind being wrong. I am curious.
Without question.
So if I can, I want to go back to your book because, again, I'm very excited about it coming out. It is coming out at the end of the month and it's available on Amazon, correct?
That's correct. First in Kindle and then it will be paperback. By May 31st, it is officially released. So just trying to get the pre-orders up there.
You definitely inspire me, Karith. I'm curious, if you had to say who would be your target audience or your target group for the book, who do you think would most benefit from it? What would you say?
Wow. So the book is almost like a note to self. I'm not going to lie. Everything I put in this book was something that I needed to hear and still need to hear to this day. So I would say, if I had to pick, a target audience or an avatar, as they say now, it would be a woman, professional, 30s and 40s. But to me, it crosses the gender barrier lines. It crosses the age line. I do have plans for a version of this for students. You can be happy for students. I have a corporate version that I've been kind of thinking about and plotting out. But the reality is that it's for anyone who has ever doubted themselves. It's for anyone who's ever thought they weren't enough. It's for anyone who's ever, thought, just been so critical. And it's giving you permission to be human, to be fallible. And we need that. I know I need that at times.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. Doing this show has actually brought me a lot closer to people who know me, who haven't heard from me. And I have family who watches these shows and reaches out. And the funny thing is I have an uncle who I call my executive producer. And so every week after a show, he will tell me, he told me to not use the earbuds with the cord. So I needed to get the ones in my ear. So that is now what I'm sporting. But he called me this week and he suggested a question. So if I may, I'd like to ask this question.
I love it.
And he said, given where you are now in your life and what you know, if you could go back and talk to the 25-year-old you, given all the experiences and knowledge you have, what would you try to tell or teach that person to hopefully make their life a little easier?
It's the same thing I would say to my 12-year-old me, my 16-year-old me, my 18-year-old me, and my 20. Don't worry. Don't worry so much. It's gonna work out.
Okay.
It will sort itself out. Don't get so caught up in the how. Just understand that it's a process and it's a journey, and you can always make a correction. But keep taking those chances. Take those risks. Which is ironic that I have taken so many, considering I am this recovering perfectionist who wants it to be so right that I do get caught up sometimes. But again, I think sometimes it's the what if that outweighs the perfection, the need for perfection. It's like this battle in my head. But the what if always wins. So I'm like, I gotta go for this. I gotta do it. Because I can't live with wondering.
That's true. It's funny you say that, because when I first had this idea for the show, I wanted to put something together and have people on that have impacted my life in some way. And I wanted to sort of introduce them to the world. And you have definitely impacted my life, Karith, and I'm grateful for our friendship. Is there anything else you would like to share?
I mean, this book is a heart and soul project. And like I said, it's, I've filled it with messages and stories, anecdotes, quotes that really resonated with me. And, I need this book as much as I feel other people do. This wasn't like, oh, I'm the expert and here it is, and you just go with it. I need to read the book still. I mean, when I was reviewing it before it all went to my editor and was getting ready for print, there are things like, wow, yeah, I gotta remember to do that, or chill out a little bit, or not let that kind of thing affect me. It's very easy to get caught up in our own head and get in our own way, especially easy when we have a lot of downtime to get in our own head. We're not quite as busy as we were, maybe, or maybe we're a little busier, like, myself, because of this readjusting. But I think just the golden rule through all of it is the kindness. Be kind to others, be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up, don't be so hard, and keep moving. Just don't stop till you can't do anything else. You can't do any more.
That is great. Those are great advice, good words to live by. Thank you so much again for be willing to come on the show and do this. I'm eternally grateful. And again, I can't wait till the book gets out, because I promise you I'll be reading it quickly.
Thank you for having me
so much. All right. Bye-bye. Take care.